Okay, so this game is Charon Inc. It's a little, definitely a Euro style game, a mining and card purchasing game. You buy cards that look kind of like this, using little gems that I picked up. I don't know quite why I picked things like this up. Kind of on a whim. They were cheap at auction, but then I end up paying shipping, and it's really not worth it for what I'm going to get out of it. But at least I can give you a little video treatment of it. Let's take a look at what the rules are like. They're not too complicated, but they're kind of not terribly well organized by my book. It took me getting to the end of the rules to realize that they weren't completely broken, and there is sort of a little something there. So this is the setup for the game, as it were. Each player has a set of flags. They put one flag in each of these actions, and they're going to be removing flags from their actions and placing them on the board to claim gems. Also set up, and semi-randomly, I really wasn't paying much attention to player order. And that'll get set up at the end of each turn. There's going to be 4 rounds to the whole game, and we're on the first round. We use this big gem type thing to indicate which turn it is, or which round. A bunch of cards come out of the deck, and we hand each person 3 of these in the first round, and then I think those big ones get shuffled back in. And they have a cost in gems that they're going to cost you, and I guess a victory point value on top of that. And this is the biggest card in the game. You're only allowed to have 1 of each, or build 1 of each. So let's go over what the mechanics are. The initial board, you can see every area, these kind of things surrounded by the dots, has only 1 color of gem, and that's how the game is set up. You put 5 of each gem in a 5-player game, or different amounts in different numbers of players, and some of the board gets cut off in different numbers of players. So, for example, in a 2-player game, you only play with this half of or 2/3 of the board or whatever. But as more players are added, more areas are added. You seed each area with 1 gem from the bag, and then fill the rest up from the stock to the number of little holes that there are to indicate that a gem belongs there. Okay. So when you actually play, the first thing you do in each round is the players take turns staking claims. And each player in turn order grabs one of his flags and puts it somewhere. And you can put it either on one of these dots or actually in the middle of an area. If it's on a dot, it's adjacent to all areas that it kind of touches. So here it's kind of valuable because it's adjacent to 4 different areas. Obviously, putting it in the middle is less valuable in terms of how many total areas you're influencing, but it may be of value. We'll see kind of how that works out. After everybody's placed all but 1 of their flags, so everybody's got 1 remaining in an action, then you determine who gets what gems. And this is essentially just, you count up how many flags they have adjacent to that set of gems, and whoever has the most collects the whole pile. There's tiebreakers, though, because ties are probably quite likely, and those work out as follows. First, if you have the flag in the middle, you win the gems there. If it's a tiebreaker, I believe. It could actually be more complicated there. So it says, in case of a tie for influence point, the player who has the flag directly in the middle of the zone wins. I'm assuming that's out of tied players. The rules aren't very good about being explicit about things like that. If there's a complete tie, well, if there's a tie without someone in the middle, then it's going to be whoever has the most flags that are touching just 2 zones wins. So if you're in one of these places, your thing counts a little bit more than if it's not. But if you're in a 3 or 4 zone, it doesn't count at all. If there's a tie between those two, flag in the middle or flag well, if nobody has a flag in the middle and everybody has the same amount of flags in only touching 2 zones adjacent to that, who's in the ties, then nobody gets the stones. Okay. Then we adjust the turn order for the next round. And yeah, I kind of skipped something there. So, after, actually, just before you claim the gems, you can take the Stolen Intelligence action. Now, these actions work depending on the number of people who have flags there. In a 2 or 3 player game, you can be the only person who has a flag there, and then it triggers. Otherwise, it won't trigger. So if 2 people put their flags in one space, that special action won't happen. In a 4 or 5 player game, 2 people can have their flag in the same space, and it triggers for both of them. And they actually go in reverse turn order because of that, or for that. And they take their action anyway. So since I'm playing in 5 players, we're going to see people able to double up on an action. Now, the actions come at different times, and in this case, Stolen Intelligence actually comes before you claim the gems. And what you're allowed to do is you're allowed to take one of your flags and move it somewhere else on the board, into an empty space, presumably. However, you can't move it into any position that influences a 3-gem zone. So you couldn't move like to here. Now, I don't know if that's a big, you'd kind of expect that those zones would have been decided already, but whatever. This allows you to reposition basically a flag that probably isn't doing you any good because someone else went bigger in it, and get something out of it that might be of value. Okay, so then you claim the gems as I explained. And then we get the next 2 special actions in a row. Rare mineral find. Everybody who has a flag in here, well, if it's activated, gets one of these clear stones. And those clear stones count as wild stones for purchasing things. The next one's an engineering advance. If you win this action, you get to look through the discard pile and either take a card from the discard pile or one from, and I haven't explained this yet, but there's going to be a common row of cards here. At the start of each turn, yeah, let's do things really mixed up. Everybody gets 3 cards at the beginning of the game. They have to pick one that they're throwing out for anyone to be able to buy. The cards in their hand, only they can buy. And then those are turned face up. Anyway, when we get to this stage, you can either take a discard pile card, one that's already been thrown out completely, or one of these common cards and put it in your hand. Okay, now we go to adjusting the turn order, and there, the player with the most gems becomes the first player. The person with the second most gems becomes the new second player, etc. And if you're tied, your turn order remains in the same relative position as it was on the prior turn. Okay, now in turn order, you can build cards. And in order to do this, you just simply take gems that you have and pay the gem cost here. So this would cost 2 purple, 2 black, and a green to get this card out of your hand and in front of you where it'll score victory points. Alright, when you're buying cards, you're allowed to trade 3 gems of any one color for 1 gem of another color. Just in case, you collected more gems than you needed, but you have something you want to build and you just have the wrong assortment. There's one card, one of these advanced cards, called the Underground Warehouse, that has a couple of, one of these things, called the Underground Warehouse. If you have that ability, if you've got your flag there and it's legal to, there's only 1 or 2 players with flags there in a larger number of player game, then you're allowed to actually trade it 2 for 1. There's an additional advantage to the underground warehouse, which we'll get to. It's at the end of the turn. You get to keep more of your gems at the end of the turn. Okay, now we hit the next of the special abilities, which is the synchrotron, which allows you to exchange as many of one color gem on a one-for-one basis for another color as you like. And you can do that during your purchasing. Now, when you purchase, you're not allowed to buy two of the same building. So if you have an embassy, you can't buy another embassy. Simple enough. In the unlikely event, at the beginning of a round, or maybe not that unlikely, that you are dealt cards that you've already built, you're allowed to shuffle them back into the discard pile, and then you draw an equivalent number of new cards, and actually you shuffle the discard pile, draw a number of cards that you're discarding, and then put your discards into the discard pile. I'm not sure what happens if you draw another card that you've already built. Does it continue forever or not? The rules aren't clear about this. I'll say no, just because I don't like shuffling a lot. Okay, then we go to the final thing, which is resetting for the next round. Everybody's got to drop down to just 2 gems, unless they have the underground warehouse, in which case they're allowed to keep 6 of their gems. There's no limit to your hand size. Any cards in the common row are turned over and put into the discard pile. Everybody gets 2 new cards, and then discards 1 into the new common building pile. You get your flags reset into this actions, and then, and this is really left vague, the gems are reseated in the mining holes that they were at the beginning of the game. What I'm thinking that means is you add 5 new gems to each of these. There are still some gems in the bag, by the way. And that's specified in the rules that they're supposed to stay in there. So this is the only way I can understand this rule, is you grab 5 new gems, which was the initial setup, put them in the bag, distribute them into the empty spaces, and then fill up the rest of the empty space with the color that's there. This could conceivably eventually cause some weird situations where a gem color runs out or something. I'm not sure what happens in that case. I really don't know. The game does not have anything specified about that. The game lasts 4 rounds, and you get points equal to the number on the buildings. You add them up. Whoever's got the most wins. If there's a tie, whoever has the highest valued building wins. So for example, a 12 would be higher than 11, but if you tie on the 12s as well, then you go down to the next number, whatever. And you work your way down. Eventually somebody, unless you have the exact same build pattern, will get an edge there. If not, well, I guess you both win. Alright, well, we're going to give it a try, but I'm going to load this up.